Okay. So the problems that we'll be solving in this chapter are rather simple, but we will, I mean, you will later on see that like when you do spectroscopy in the next semester, I don't know which semester you do spectroscopy. So whenever you do spectroscopy, at that point you will see that whatever problems you have solved, right, in this course somehow relates to the spectroscopy observations. Okay, for example, one of the problems that we'll be solving would be a particle in a potential well. So there is a particle and it is bound in a certain well. Okay. Uh, okay, let me start sharing the screen first. Okay. So I hope all of you can see this. Right. So in this chapter will be, like I've said, can all of you see this and hear me? Please let me know, then I'll proceed.
Yes.
Yes, no? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So basically what I'm trying to motivate is that the problems that we'll solve in this chapter are basically some simple solvable problems. Okay. They do not so much represent what is happening in the real world as much. Like you can create certain boundaries and you can, put a particle inside it and then try to see if this matches with experiment and it will match. But the point is that when you do spectroscopic measurements, it does not directly relate to these kinds of problems, but it will be indirectly related. Okay, for example, one of the problems that we'll be solving would be a particle in some well. So this is a potential, okay? This is a potential that the particle is inside. So suppose the particle is over here, then you can say that, okay, the particle is experiencing this potential. So if it is over here, it will go here and it will bounce back and come back. And then if it goes here, it will again bounce back and come back. Okay, so that's the idea. So if this is happening, then you say, okay, the particle is in some potential, and this is the nature of the potential here, this particular curve. And potentials can be of different forms, right? Because this is V of x. So V of x can take different forms. In this particular case, V of x is taking this kind of a potential. So if this is the case, then when the particle is in a potential, for example, in this kind of system directly relates to absorption spectra, which you will study in the next semester. Okay, so even though these small problems that we do are not directly related to something physical, the same kind of aspects and the same kind of formalism and the same kind of solving techniques will be required when you actually solve for certain real systems as well. Okay, and obviously towards the end of the course, we will look at a hydrogen atom and look at, okay, what are the orbitals in the hydrogen atom, what is the angular momentum of the atom, of the, right, of the electron in the atom and all of that. So that is again a real problem, right? But these ones are there first to help you become comfortable with solving these problems, and then we go to more and more complicated systems. Okay, so that is the idea. So today I'm going to start. So in this chapter, we have to solve some of these boundary value problems. Okay, and we'll get to know what we mean by boundary value problems and everything. But first, let us look at the properties of a particle which is in one-dimensional motion, which is experiencing one-dimensional motion. Okay. So this is just an example. Okay. This is, I mean, right now we're not solving any problem. So just to give you an example. So this is a potential, right? This curve here represents a potential because this is V of x versus x. X is the position of the particle. Okay. So you have V of x versus x. And now if you look at this side, okay, if the particle is over here from, let's say from this side, from x1 to minus infinity, okay, if it is over here, then the particle is bound, okay, it is bound by this potential, okay. Actually, let's look at it this way. that if the particle, so there are two regions, okay? One is the bound state and the continuum state. I've already told you bound state means that the particle is bound in a certain region of space. And so what happens is when you solve the Schrodinger equation, you will get some discrete energy values. Okay, in the continuum state, what happens? The particle is not restricted. It can go to infinity and everything. Okay, and if the particle is not restricted, then the energy that you get after solving the Schrodinger equation, those are continuum energies. Okay, meaning they are not discrete energies. Okay, that's what we mean. So let's read this. So bound states are states where the particle cannot go to infinity. That is, the particle is confined or bound to certain energy states or certain region of space. So if you look at this side, okay, between x1 and x2, so if you just look at a particle which is between x1 and x2 and it is over here, right, then it is bound between V min and V1. Okay, V1 is the maximum for this side and V min is the minimum of the entire potential. So it is bound by the energy, by the potential between V1 and V min. Okay, so energy is lying somewhere here and the particle is confined in this, between these two boundaries. Okay, so it cannot go. So the representation of the particle. So the particle will be represented by a wave function, right? Because this is a quantum particle. So this wave function will be in such a way that if you solve for the energy values of the wave function using the Schrodinger equation, then you will get discrete energy states. Okay, that's what it means. Okay, so this represents a bound state. So I've already told you, if you solve for Schrodinger equation between this region, so between x1 and x2, and which is bound between V1 and V min, right? If you solve for this region in the potential, then you are going to get solutions will be discrete energies and discrete energy eigenstates. Okay, so this leads us to some two theorems. And the theorems are as follows. In a one-dimensional problem, the energy levels of a bound state system are discrete and degenerate. Okay, so this is something that will come up again and again when we solve some actual problems. But right now I'm just stating it as a theorem. So in a one-dimensional problem, the energy levels of a bound state are discrete as well as degenerate. Degenerate meaning there can be two or more eigenvalues which have the same value, right? Two or more eigenvalues are the same. That is what you mean by degenerate. Okay. And second, the wave function psi n of x of a one-dimensional bound state system has n nodes. Okay, so when you solve for psi n of x, okay, in the bound state, okay, if the system is bound between some two boundaries and you're solving the Schrodinger equation, then you will also get the wave function. So the wave function will be such that it will have n nodes. Okay, I'll explain in a bit what we mean by n nodes. So n nodes means that the wave function vanishes at those points. So if there are n nodes, it means that the wave function vanishes n times. Okay, has n nodes if n equal to 0. Corresponds to the ground state, and n minus 1 nodes if n equal to 1 corresponds to the ground state. So this statement again we will see when we solve the problem and we'll come back to it. But let me first explain what we mean by nodes. So suppose this is a wave function psi n of x. This is a graph of psi n of x versus x, right? So when you say n nodes, okay, the nodes, what it means that the wave function should become 0 at those points. So here the points x1 which is 0 itself here, x2, x3, these three are called nodes. Okay, because at these 3 points, the wave function becomes 0. Okay, so the y-axis becomes 0, and so these 3 points are called as nodes. Okay, so that is the idea. So it is saying that if for a bound state, if you solve for the Schrodinger equation and then if you solve for the wave function using the Schrodinger equation, you are going to get the wave function in such a way that there will be some nodes in the wave function. Okay, the nodes basically means that the wave function becomes zero at those points. Okay, so it will be some kind of a periodic function, obviously, and that is why it is becoming zero. So these are the two theorems for bound states. Okay. Now, is this clear? Okay, we'll come back to this again and again, but let us start. Let me just state this statement here, and then when we solve the problems, we'll see that this is actually true. All right. So now, continuous. When you come to continuous spectrum, which is the unbound state. Okay. So unbound state occurs in those cases where the motion of the particle is not confined. Right? So if the particle can go up to infinity, it is not at all confined, it is not experiencing a potential, then you say that the system is unbound. Or even if it is experiencing a potential, but there is a minimum potential, but above it, it can go to any place, then also you say that it is representing the unbound state. Okay. So in the figure here, so free particle is an example of a what do you call a system which has unbound states because it has no potential. Free particle means the system is the particle is not experiencing any potential at all, which means V is zero. So in the Schrodinger equation, you remember there is minus h cross square by 2l dou square by dou x square into psi of x plus V of x into psi of x. So that V of x term, if that is zero, then you say that that particle is a free particle. It is not experiencing any potential at all. Okay, so that is an example of a system which will give you continuous spectrum or it will have unbound states. Okay, but in this particular diagram that I have drawn, what is the unbound state? Okay, the unbound state would be some energy, okay, some energy which is between V1 and V2. Okay, there are two cases. Some energy where energy is between V1 and V2 and also energy where it is greater than V2. So let's look at it. Okay, let's say your energy is somewhere here. Okay, in this line. I have not drawn the line here, but let's imagine that there is a line here and that is the energy. Okay, this energy is between V1. So V1 is over here. This point is V1. This point is V2. And E is over here somewhere. Okay, so E is between V1 and V2. So if you look at this energy or this particle which is having this energy, you can notice that it is free to move in this negative x direction. Okay, so in the negative x direction, it is absolutely free to move. So this is also like an unbound state. But in this direction, in the positive x direction, there is a potential and it will hit the potential at some point in the x direction, the positive x direction. So in this direction, in the right direction, it is not free to move, but in the left direction, it is free to move. So this is also an example of an unbound state. Okay. Now, if you consider the second case where the energy is above V2, okay, so energy E is some point above V2. So if you look at now this point, let's say the particle has this energy E, which is above V2, then you will see that the particle is free to move both in the positive x direction and in the negative x direction, right? Because there is no, it is not bound by any potential. Okay, so those are the two cases, and in both these cases, we will have continuum states. Okay. All right. So let's read it once more so that it makes sense. So in the case where V1 is less than E less than V2, that is energy E is between V1 and V2. In that case, the particle's motion is infinite towards the negative x direction, meaning when towards x equal to minus infinity. So energy spectrum is continuous and none of the energy eigenvalues are degenerate. Okay. So just take this statement for now. If you're interested in more explanation about this statement, you can read the book. But I think when we solve the problem, we will see when it is degenerate, when it is not degenerate, and all of that. Okay, so in this case, the energy spectrum is continuous, and the important point is that none of the energy eigenvalues are degenerate. Okay, and in the second case, the case where energy is greater than V2. In this case, the particle's motion is infinite in both the directions, right? In negative x direction as well as positive x direction, the particle is free to move because it is not experiencing the potential, like it is not bounded by a potential. So all the energy levels of the spectrum are doubly degenerate. Okay, so here again the energy levels of the spectrum are doubly degenerate, even though these are continuum states. Okay, one more point is that bound states can be normalized, but unbound states cannot be normalized. Okay, so this is also something that we will see when we solve a problem. So because bound states can be normalized, they represent physical wave functions, because every wave function, which we have seen in the previous chapter, every wave function has to be square integrable. Square integrable meaning that if you square the wave function and then you take its integration with respect to the variable, which is, let's say, if it is a one-dimensional wave function, then with respect to x, so with respect to dx. So if you do integration from minus infinity to infinity, size square of x dx, then you should get some value, right? That is what you mean by this, the wave function can be normalized, right? But if it cannot be normalized, because if it is giving some weird infinity or some kind of a thing which cannot be normalized, then you say, and that is the case for unbound states. So unbound states cannot be normalized, but bound states can be normalized. Okay, because for bound states we use the boundary conditions, but for unbound states we cannot use boundary conditions, and so we cannot know what the coefficients are. Okay, all right. So I think when we solve a problem, we'll have to see how this can work out. Okay, any questions up to this point? Do you understand this diagram? This diagram, do you understand? Okay, let me know if you have any questions or doubts. All right, so moving ahead, let's look at a free particle. Now, free particle, I've already told you, is a particle which does not experience any potential, okay? Which means that V is 0. V of x is 0 in the Schrodinger equation. So what we have to do now in all of these, in this entire chapter, what we'll do is we'll just keep solving the Schrodinger equation for different cases. Okay, so that's what we are going to do now. So the system here is a free particle, which means that it does not have any potential. That means V of x is 0. So let's solve the Schrodinger's equation. So the Schrodinger equation fully is minus h cross square by 2m d square psi by dx square plus V into psi is equal to E psi. Now V of x, we have said that it is 0 for free particles. So we set this to 0. What do we get? We get this equation. Okay. Now this equation, okay, it can also be written in this form. I've just taken the minus to the, like this term to the other side and taken the h cross square by 2m to the other side and all of that. So it can be written to in this form. Now you can further simplify it. Let's assume, or let's set that k square is equal to this term. So we can get d square by dx square plus k square into psi of x is equal to 0. Okay, now can someone tell me how to solve this equation? Okay, now this is the equation that you need to solve, right? Because you need to find what the wave function is. So you need to solve this equation. So can anyone tell me how to solve this equation?
We can solve by assuming
like
a quadratic equation.
Yeah, exactly. So I've taught you in the previous semester, right? How to solve the second order differential equation. So this is exactly like that. You have to use the formula and solve it. So we have done it this way in our class in the previous semester. So we get d is equal to plus or minus ik, and so psi of x has a plus, so a plus and a minus I'm setting to be the two constants, and the two terms will be e power ikx and e power minus ikx, right? So this is your solution for the wave function using the Schrodinger's equation. So now, So these two are constants, okay? If we had some initial condition or some boundary conditions, we could have solved for what is a plus and a minus, right? Then we could have assumed that, okay, psi is something at x equal to something, and so we would be able to solve what is a plus and a minus. But since we do not have any boundary conditions, because this is a free particle, so free particle is free to move everywhere. There is no potential that it is experiencing. So in that case, we do not know how to solve for a plus and a minus. We cannot solve for it. Okay, so this is the solution. Now, if you want to write the complete wave function in terms of time as well, how will you include it? This also we have seen in the previous chapter. You just add the I omega t part, right? So if you add the I omega e power minus I omega t in both the solutions, you will get the complete wave function, which is both a function of position and time. Okay, here what is omega? Omega, I have done a small calculation here. You can see omega is nothing but 2 pi into frequency, nu. Okay, so if you add 2 pi h nu by h, multiply both numerator and denominator by h, then h nu is your energy and h by 2 pi is your h cross. So this becomes E by h cross. So your E is now, you have already defined E in terms of K. So you can define E in terms of K and you will get h cross square K square by 2 and h cross. And so omega is going to be h cross K square by 2. So this is what I have written here. Okay, so here this is your omega. All right. Now let's say, let's look at one part of this equation. Okay, so let's call this term as psi plus and this term as psi minus. So psi plus is your this term a plus into e power I into kx minus omega t. Okay, so this represents a wave that is traveling to the right. Okay, this always represents a wave that is traveling to the right because x is positive, it is going to in the positive x direction. Okay, and this psi minus represents a wave which is traveling to the negative x direction. So it is traveling to the left. In both of these cases, we have well-defined momenta and energy. Okay, momenta, energy, you know what it is given by. Energy is, you have already defined it here. Okay, energy also you know and momenta also you know. I'm so sorry, everyone seems to be calling me today. Don't know why. Okay. All right, so yeah, so you can basically break this down into two parts, psi plus and psi minus. All right. So now we have got the solution for this equation, and now let's see what are the consequences of this solution. Okay, one of the things that I have already mentioned earlier, right? Let's see, what did we say? We said something for continuum states. Right? We said that unbound states cannot be normalized, right? This is one statement that we said, that we made, okay? So this is something that will come up now. Let's see how it comes up, okay? This is a free, now this problem that we are solving, it is a free particle, okay? Which means it is an unbound particle. It is not bound by any potential, nothing. It does not experience any potential. So this is an unbound particle, unbound, so it will give you unbound states. So if it gives you unbound states, that means that the system cannot be normalized. The wave function representing the state cannot be normalized, right? So let's see if that happens. So what are the consequences of this system? First is, if you try to get the probability density of this wave function, okay, individually for the individual parts, if you try to get the probability density, so probability density is just the modulus of the so square of the modulus of the wave function, right? So if you do this, you are going to get only a plus or a minus whole square, right? Because if this is psi plus, then you have to, in order to take the modulus, you have to do psi star into psi. Okay, so this e power I kx and e power minus I kx, you know, those terms will get cancelled and you will be left with a plus square, right? So that is what you have. So this is a constant. Okay, if this is a constant, this is a complete constant. It does not depend on either x or time. So it does not depend on position and time. So this probability distribution has no information about the position. Okay, so which means that there is a loss of information about the position of the particle. So we have no information about, see, in quantum mechanics, how do you know where the particle is? You only know where the particle is if you know what is the probability of finding the particle at a certain position. Okay, you cannot know for sure where the particle is, but you can know what is the probability of finding the particle. So in this case, you are basically not getting any particular information about the position of the particle, because for all values of x, your your probability is constant. Okay, so this is in line with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, because here momentum is defined. It is given by root of 2 plus or minus root of 2me. Okay, so here you are getting plus or minus h cross k, and energy is defined. So momentum and energy are known properly, which means that uncertainty in momentum and uncertainty in energy is 0, because you know what the momentum and energy is, right? So if that is the case, then uncertainty in the position becomes infinity and uncertainty in time becomes infinity, using the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So this fact, that the fact that you are getting probability to be some constant irrespective of what the value of x is, that shows that position is not known because momentum and energy are known properly. Of course, this is a contradiction. You cannot know you cannot know, right, the position, the momentum and energy fully properly. But let's see, so this is what you're getting in terms of when you're solving the probability distribution. Okay, now the second consequence is what is the speed of the plane waves. Okay, so there are two ways you can get the speed of the plane waves. One is to get the speed using omega by k. K is the wave vector. Okay, so if you just do omega by k, you will get h cross k by 2m. Okay, and if you on the other hand, you can get the speed also using the momentum, right? If you just do momentum by m, right, momentum by mass, you are going to get the speed in the classical sense. Okay, so in the wave, for the wave dynamics, you are getting getting the speed of the wave using the angular angular velocity by wave vector, and in the classical sense, you can get it by momentum by mass, right? So in this classical sense, you are getting h cross k by m. So these two, this one and this one is not the same, but if it is the same particle, whether it is represented by a wave, in the wave manner or in the particle manner, both should have the same speed. It doesn't matter what the representation is, because the particle is a dual. It exhibits the wave particle duality, which means the speed has to be the same. So in this case, there is some discrepancy that is happening here. Okay, because this is not equal to this. There is a factor of 2 here, which is missing here. Okay, so there is some kind of a discrepancy. Now the third consequence of this is that the wave function is not normalizable. So if you do like psi plus star into psi into dx and then take the integration of it, you're getting some this constant that comes out, and then you're getting minus infinity to infinity integration over dx. Okay, so this integration obviously is not physical. Okay, because I mean you're going to do infinity minus or minus infinity, you're going to get some infinity. Okay, which is definitely not something, I mean it's not a proper value. So it means that the wave function is not normalizable. So this means that the solutions, right, what solutions we had? We had these two solutions. This was our solution. So the solutions psi plus and psi minus, these are unphysical. Okay, that's what it means. Because physical wave functions have to be square integrable. If they are not square integrable, meaning that if they are not normalizable, then that means that the function is unphysical. Something is wrong with the function. Okay, but the point is that this is the solution that you're getting. You didn't think of the solution out of the blue. The third consequence was that if you try to normalize this wave function, it is not getting normalized properly, right? You're getting infinity as the answer. which is obviously not correct, because when you normalize something, should give you some constant value. It should not be infinity as the answer. So this means that this wave function is not square integrable. So this is one of the problems here. Okay. So the solution to all of these discrepancies, right? There are these three discrepancies. One was that the probability was the same everywhere, no matter what where the particle was located. Second discrepancy was that when you calculated the speed of the particle in terms of the wave and in terms of like the wave dynamics and in terms of the particle dynamics, you got two different speeds and they were not equal to each other. So there is some discrepancy here. And the third consequence was that the wave function was not normalizable. So all of these consequences are because the system is not bound by any potential. Okay, it is free to move everywhere. So this is showing up some discrepancy. So the workaround to this problem is that you write down the wave function in terms of wave packets. Okay, and what are wave packets? Wave packets we have seen in the first chapter, I think. That wave packets is a linear superposition of plane waves, which means you combine many different plane waves as a linear combination of all of those, and then you add, basically it's a linear combination. So basically you're adding up many of the plane waves with respect to some constant, and then that creates your wave packet. So it is basically a group of waves. Okay, and the way you represent the wave packet is through this equation. Okay, where basically it is saying that this equation is the Fourier transform of phi of k. So Fourier transform of phi of k is going to, or inverse Fourier transform of phi of k is going to give you psi of x comma t, right? And what is phi of k? Phi of k is the amplitude of the wave packet. So if you remember from our first chapter, we were looking at a Gaussian wave packet, right? So Gaussian wave packet means that it was some phi of k was some function of e power minus constant into k square. Okay, so that is like a Gaussian wave packet. So so this function is a continuous function. Okay, and since this function is a continuous function, this wave function represents a group of waves. Okay, and this group of waves now represents your position of the particle in a localized region. Okay, so that's what it means. All right, any question up to this point? I hope I've not been logged out today. All right.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, whenever you are bounding or imposing some condition on any system, you are imposing condition only on potential. So
Yes.
if we want to make the system bound, so is it possible that without imposing condition on potential, we can apply some condition on other variable to make it bound?
So I think what you're asking is, like, you just set x equal to so psi of x is equal to some value when x is, let's say psi of x is equal to a when x is equal to b, right? Something like that you're saying. So that is a boundary condition, isn't
Yes.
it? But
Yes.
if you represent it physically, it is going to be represented by a potential actually, because ultimately you are getting this solution using the Schrodinger equation. Okay, so this boundary condition is coming about because there was a potential somewhere. Otherwise, this boundary condition would not have happened.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, so physically it is represented by a potential, and when you solve it, it comes out as a boundary condition. So that is how you can interpret it. Okay, so again, like I've said earlier, in this chapter, we will solve these small problems, and most of these problems will involve solving the differential equation, because Schrodinger equation is a differential equation. Okay, so here again, this is another problem. Here there are two regions. Okay, so in region 1, there is no potential. Okay, so particle is not experiencing any potential, V naught is 0. In region 2, so at this point, there is some V naught here. Okay, so these are the two regions in this diagram, you can say. And in region 2, there is a potential of V naught. So now you can assume that there are two cases, right? Because one case can be that energy is greater than V naught, and the other case can be that energy is between 0 and V naught. Okay, so those are the two cases. Okay, so this is the diagram where energy is between 0 and V naught. Okay, and so V of x, right? The entire V of x can be represented. So this is a step function. I keep, like, I think in the previous lectures also I've talked about step functions quite a bit. So this is exactly a step function, right? So from minus infinity to 0 on the x-axis, the V of x was 0, and suddenly at x equal to 0, up to x equal to infinity, V of x is V naught. So this is a step function. Suddenly the potential is increasing up to a certain point and then staying constant beyond that. So this is exactly a step function. So this is a problem where basically we're saying what happens if the particle is over here, what happens if the particle. So basically the particle is somewhere here. So if the energy of the particle is above V naught, then what is the situation? If the energy of the particle is below V naught, then what is the situation? So we have to solve for these two cases in the problem. Okay. So I think today I will just stop here. Here I'm just representing V of x. I'll just stop here because this is a longish calculation, so I didn't want to go into the calculation right away. So tomorrow I'll go through the calculation, and then we will see how this is manifesting. And we'll solve some more problems tomorrow. Okay. Any questions up to this point? So these are the kinds of problems that we'll be solving. Another problem that we'll be solving is, let's say there is another potential here on this side also, V naught. Okay, which means the particle is here, somewhere inside this. Then what happens? What happens if the energy is above these two potentials? What happens if the energy is below these two potentials? That is also one such problem. Okay, another problem could be that instead of V is equal to V naught, what happens if it is infinite potential? Okay, meaning that it just goes straight like that. And here also it goes straight like that. So the particle is confined between a well. Okay, it might be called like a well. So those are the kinds of problems we will solve. And that way we will understand what happens if the system is bound versus what happens if the system is unbound. All right. So in this case, can you tell me whether the system is bound or unbound when the energy of the particle is above V naught? Is the system bound or unbound? Can someone tell me?
Unbound.
Unbound. That's correct.